everyone to another study session with KP. I'm KP, and today we'll be doing pseudocode to flowchart. We're converting pseudocode to flowchart. So we're doing some practice, right? Now we'll do a for loop, right? And for loop by nature is a counter control loop. It is going to be repeating the steps for a certain number of time, right? And in this one, it's going from 1 to 12, right? Now, there's something special about a for loop when you're going to translate it to a flowchart. And this is key, and we need to remember it, right? There's no symbol to represent for, right, in a flowchart. So what we'll do is that this statement is special, right? So what we need to remember when we're doing a for loop is that we need to know represent it as a repeat loop or a while loop before we translate it to flowchart, right? And that is, it's simpler than it sounds, right? We're going to start by converting the loop into a while loop. So we see where for I equal 1. So we're just looking at the loop, the loop itself. For I equal 1 to 12, do. What that is telling you that I will start at 1 and it will go up to 12. So if we're going to convert this to a while loop, we need a variable, the same variable I, right? Make sure you're seeing. We need the same variable I, and that is going to be equal to a sign initialized to 1. We now need to have a while loop, while, and the condition do. Right, so let me put this where you can see what's happening. All right. Put it here and give it a different color. Right. So inside the while loop, we're going to say while I is less than or equal to 12, because it's going up to 12, right? The for loop is going up to 12. So we're going to do the statements from 1 up to 12. And everything inside the loop would remain the same, right? Number is going to be equal to 9 times I. Print number, and then we have our end while, right? One statement needs to be in there. Remember now, we have, remember now for this example, we have a counter, right? For this is going to be a while loop, right? With a counter control loop. And for this example, that means we need the counter. So I here in this example is starting at 1, it's going up to 12. So we need a counter that will be incrementing each time the loop goes around. So I is the counter, and I will be incremented, which means 1 will be added each time it goes around the loop. And that would be what it would look like when we transform the for loop into a while loop, right? There it is side by side, right? This is what it would look like, right? Transformed. Right? So with that said, now we need to follow the tip where we're going to go through each line and identify what symbol it would be represented as in the flowchart. So we won't be looking at the for loop here. We'll be looking at what we translated it to as a while loop. So we know that our statement start would be still in it. We still have a terminator, right? I equal 1, that would be a process. While I is less than or equal to 12, that's a condition, right? So it's a decision. Number equal to 9 times I, that's a process. Print, that's an input output. This is a process, that counter, where we're incrementing, and then we end. And the stop is a terminator. So just remember, we need to translate this for loop as either a repeat loop or a while loop before we can move to converting it to a flowchart. All right, so let's convert it now. Let's write it as a flowchart. So we have our start, and that goes in an oval. We have our flow line. First is a process where I is equal to 1. That goes in a rectangle. Then we have a decision, which is asking, right, is I less than or equal to 12? That's a question, right? I'm trying to make this as clear as possible. So that's I less than or equal to 12. That's a question, right? If it's yes, we go inside the loop. If it is no, we go outside the loop. So if it is yes, what do we have? We have another process which says number is equal to 9 times I, and that goes in a rectangle. Then we have an input output, which is print number. That goes in an input output. I equal to I plus 1. That goes in a rectangle. And we have our flow line. And once that happens now, what will we have? We go back up to the top of the loop and ask the question again. All right, that is yes. When it is no, what happens? We stop. And it goes in an oval. So when it is no, we stop. And that's it for how we convert a for loop to a flowchart. So just remember, for a flowchart, when we're doing a for loop, we need to translate it to a while loop or a repeat until loop. So in this example, we translated it to a while loop. And then now we identify what symbols each line in the pseudocode would be represented as in a flowchart, and then we drew our flowchart. So we've reached the end of this practice session. I hope you guys learned something, and keep practicing. Our exams are right around the corner, right? It's next week, Friday. So see you guys in another study time with KP. Bye.